This is Tokens, Public Theology, Human Flourishing, and the Good Life. I'm Lee C. Camp. Having worked in academia, as well as in the occasional world of entertainment, I've often seen others and have sometimes fallen prey myself to a grave obstacle, that of taking oneself too seriously. Yet today's guests have made vocations that push back against such, not because they don't take their work seriously, but because they do.
No one is funnier than when they're taking themselves too seriously.
That's Antsy McClain, longtime artist and songwriter here in Nashville.
We trust people that we can laugh with, so being intentional about this kind of relationship changes us.
And that's Andy Gullahorn, another accomplished singer, songwriter, and performer here in Nashville. And today, songs and stories about the spiritual goods of humor, too seldom taken seriously as a practice of human flourishing. Coming right up after this short break. This is Token Show, podcast about public theology, human flourishing, the good life. I'm Lee C. Camp. We're gathered here today at the Sound Emporium in the lovely, intimate Studio B with two most outstanding special Nashville-based singer-songwriters, Andy Gullahorn and Antsy McClain. Got Gabe Scott on the dobro, Tim Lauer at the Wurlitzer, Joe Trinicosti back at the soundboard. Welcome.
If everything has two sides, I guess there is a downside to only seeing the bright side of life. 'Cause if you are not grounded, or your head's in the clouds, then you lose sight of what's real and what's right. So we need some kind of equalizing force to take us down when we get on our high horse. So we have teenagers, they'll expose you as a fool like it's their mission to. Oh, teenagers, I know it feels personal. That's because it is. But who else could protect us from having fun in public, from wearing things that might be out of style? And who else could remind us our best years are behind us, not getting any younger, we're dying. When they're not eating, they're just trying to help. 'Cause sometimes it's hard to beat yourself up by yourself. So we have teenagers, when we want them gone, they're here. When we don't, they disappear. Ooh, teenagers, you might think they're being selfish. Of course the ones I have are the exceptions to the rule. They're perfect little angels all the time. They are asleep. I guess that as their father, the best that I can do is help my babies become good adults, not perfect in between. They say these years will fly by, so we should savor this time. And there's so much to savor these days. Before you know it, they're gone, with little kids of their own, grateful for the way they were raised. So if we can keep from killing them till then, maybe one day we will all have sweet revenge when they have teenagers. You know they say what goes around comes back to your kids when they have their own teenagers. Teenagers.
Andy Gullahorn. Thank you, Andy.
Sure thing.
Yes, sir. I'm pleased to welcome Andy Gullahorn, Antsy McClain here today. As you were playing, I was thinking how excited I am to have both of you guys here, because I think that I don't go back and I'll go through an album that I like and I'll listen to it repeatedly for a short time. But there's not a lot of things I'll go back to after I get my binge on it. I'm kind of like done with it. But there's several that I'll go back to, and I love going back to Andy stuff, and I love going back to Antsy stuff.
Thanks. That's cool.
And so I feel honored to have both of y'all here today.
Good to be here.
And one of the things that's so beautiful, I think, about your craft is the way you're able to weave together humor in a way that brings out the poignancy and the beauty of life. And it's just a really special gift, and grateful to have you here doing some of that.
Thanks. I'm just stunned to silence here. It's high cotton here today, Lee. Thank you, man.
So how do y'all talk a little bit about it? So Andy, maybe you first on how you think about your craft and how you think about humor. I think both of you are obviously going for more than simply getting people to laugh. So how do you think about what it is you're doing with laughter?
I when I really started writing songs, I think an undercurrent for all of it was a desire for some sort of healing, whether that's for other people, but primarily for myself. And to me, laughter has always been a great tool for that, a way of opening up. So, I mean, usually anything that's like humorous, I would use in a show to make somebody feel more comfortable so that we can talk about some other deeper things as well. And I also kind of like to try to put all that into one song if I can. But I just found it's a great way for people to loosen up. And for some reason, we trust people that we can laugh with.
Yeah.
So I think it makes people feel like they can trust me for an evening.
Yeah.
Well, with a song like Teenagers, too, I mean, you're dealing with a subject, a lot of families, it's probably going to be pretty touchy stuff. But because of the universality of it, and we've all dealt with that, and now we can laugh at it a little bit. We can step back from it and not take it so heavy. Then you can go back and proceed with the healing for sure. Yeah.
We academics are especially slow to embrace humor. And I think part of that is because we have this sort of affliction maybe sometimes of taking ourselves too seriously. But it also seems to me that in Nashville, for the entertainers, singer-songwriters, that might be a challenge for you guys as well, because there seems so much pressure to so-called make it, or however you want to frame what success means in Nashville. But how have you found?
When you figure that out, let me know.
But how do you find? Does the fact that you are in touch with humor help with that, or what are ways you found to kind of navigate that in the work that you're doing?
I look at characters, the richest, best characters on television. These guys that are, no one is funnier than when they're taking themselves too seriously. And then they make themselves a target. And there's a lot of those kind of characters I write about. It's like, the guy that walks in a room and thinks he's all that. And then you can, kind of dissect the situation and make things more comical. But I know what you're saying about the humor thing. Some academics, but I think it's even more than that. A lot of people don't want humor in their music. And I think that's because there was a lot of hokey comedic music written and produced in the 70s that sort of turned a lot of people off. And it was just a laugh track on there, and they're trying to tell me when to laugh and everything. And I can see why people were turned off by that. So when I come across musicians that Joe Walsh, who can write songs that are really funny songs and expose the foibles of even his own life, and can laugh at himself, I'm like, those are the guys I gravitated to.
I think there's also something kind of scary about writing humorous songs. Or one, I think they're some of the harder ones to write, which is why generally when I write, quote humorous songs, it's hard for me to decide if they're funny or not. But I always write them with an escape hatch. I would always want to write them to where I could sing it with a straight face, so that if I'm playing it in a room and nobody laughs, I could pretend like they weren't supposed to.
Straight song.
Yeah, I'd be like, oh no, that was serious. I don't know why people are laughing. So even then, I'm still afraid to kind of sometimes just put myself out there and say, hey, I think this is funny. It's very vulnerable.
Yeah.
And I think it's not easy to be vulnerable. I think for all sorts of reasons, not just artists, we're all trying to find ways to get around that. But to me, there is something really vulnerable about saying, hey, I think this is kind of funny, and I'm going to bring it to a group of people and hope that they connect with it too. Yeah. But there is also the side where it's like, maybe you're not taking it as seriously as Bruce Springsteen or something like that, which I'm okay with that.
I want to go back, Andy, to something you said a minute ago about the way in which you thought humor had been a practice facilitating healing of some sort. Can you talk a little more about that?
Well, I just think it's, in my experience, like growing up when I first started listening to some great folk singer-songwriters, guys like John Gorka, who I thought did it so well. If you kind of came with this message like, oh, I have something that's for you, but it's all kind of just shoving it down their throats, it just didn't seem very effective to me. But when I could see somebody who is self-deprecating like John and was just kind of making people laugh and make you feel comfortable, then you could couch some of the harder things, the challenges. Right. It's like putting a pill in cheese for the dog or something like that.
That's
do people do that? I don't know.
Great analogy. I'm jotting that down.
Those are my songs.
That's right.
Pills and cheese. Wonder why it won't be successful.
Yeah. Antsy got one about Nashville for us.
I do, yeah. This one's called Writer's Night. I found myself about several years ago, I was sitting at night with my dog watching Netflix just night after night after night. And I had some friends that were very concerned about me, and they said, man, you need to get out. You live right here in one of the coolest towns in the world, and get out. Get out. And they practically, shoved me out the door. I go, what? I'm not a bar guy. I don't go hang out at bars. That's just not my thing. He said, well, go to some writers' nights. I go, man, I did that like 25 years ago. I don't want to do that again. I go, no, it'll be cool. You'll meet people, pass business cards around. You might even co-write with some folks and everything. And one friend told me, he said, you might get a song out of it. And I did. All these people in this song are people I met or saw at a writer's night over a year's time, getting out of the house and away from Netflix. It's writer's night in Nashville, and Debbie comes all the way from Kingston Springs. It's only 40 miles or so, and she's made longer drives for lesser things. Mickey's here with his banjo. His wife's got a seat up front with her glass of Sprite. There's a nervous kid by the back door. It looks like it might be her first writer's night. Well, I put my name on the list when I came in. It feels like 80 hours ago. I don't mind paying my dues, win or lose, but damn, these wheels turn slow. And this song won't get picked up, I'm just preaching to the choir, and that's all right. A lot of folks ain't got the guts, but look at us, here we are on Writer's Night. Something keeps us going, where we're going's anybody's guess. Some of us have disappeared and some have had success. Just exercise your demons, make it rhyme more or less. Share it with your friends on a writer's night. Well, Tom's got a murder ballad. It's 40 verses long and he's bringing the whole place down. Anne's got another angry breakup song, and she wonders why all the men stopped coming round. Bob's gonna sing about Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. We're all gonna hear about Jesus, whether or not we want to, but that's his right. But I can't wait to see his face when a Muslim comes to sing on Writer's Night. Jafar's gonna sing about Allah, Allah, Allah. We're all gonna hear about Allah, whether or not we want to, but that's his right. We're like patients in a madhouse who escaped with our guitars on Writer's Night. Barry's here with his sister. They're singing love duets. It kind of creeps us out. They stare into each other's eyes. Did I say they were brother and sister? What's that all about? Jan's still working at the Mapco. She's a single mom but sings like a bird in flight. We're all doing the best we can, trying to reach the promised land on Writer's Night. Daryl brought his guitar. I don't think it's been in tune since '93. And Antsy wrote a new song, but we'll only hear about half because of his ADD. Don's using too many words again, cramming 47 syllables into that one line when 12 would have been just right. But who am I to judge? I'm just another name on a list at Writer's Night. And half of you ain't listening, you're just here to do your thing and move along. Well, that's alright, as long as you don't mind the rest of us doing the same when you sing your song. I really ought to have a good line here, 'cause I got your attention now, alright. Well, I could really use a co-writer, but I ticked everybody off on Writer's Night. We steal each other's lines, yeah, that's kinda how it works around here. You don't reveal your sources, just say a muse whispered in your ear. We're all too broke to sue ya, hallelujah. Have another beer and raise a toast to the host of Writer's Night. Yeah, let's raise a toast to the host of Writer's Night.
You're listening to Tokens, Public Theology, Human Flourishing, The Good Life, and we are most grateful to have you joining us. Remember, you can subscribe today to the Tokens podcast on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, CastBox, or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Love hearing from you. Email us, podcast@tokenshow.com, or go over to our website and sign up for all sorts of goodies and other ways you can join us, all at tokenshow.com. This is our episode on friendship, featuring these two most outstanding human beings we got in the studio with us today, Andy Gullahorn and Antsy McClain, taped live at Nashville Sound Emporium, joined by Gabe Scott on dobro and Tim Lauer on keys. Welcome back to Token Show and our episode on the spiritual practice of humor. Harking back to the conversation that we've had about healing already, not only is the humor an attempt, it appears, for a lot of us at healing, but just songwriting, right? It's an attempt maybe of saying something about life that kind of helps us make sense of life, or if not make sense of it, at least find a way to keep going forward, maybe?
I guess. Yeah, I mean, I teach songwriting stuff, and we do Zoom classes and everything, and I've asked that question so many times, like, why do we do what we do? Why do we feel this need to, kind of chronicle things? Like, it's not enough to have actually lived and experienced it. We have to write about it, or it never happened almost, Then the analyzing can sometimes drive me a little nuts. I got that kind of brain that won't stop. And so it's helpful for me to get in situations where I'm, where there isn't a guitar and I don't have a pad right next to me, and I'm not apt to just pick up my phone and start writing in my notes, ideas and stuff.
I mean, both of you guys are have a high aptitude, I think, for being able to describe things that one might call poignant, right? You have a way to point to the poignancy of life.
Poignant.
Yeah,
I pronounce it poignant, but yeah,
so you're very poignant.
That's cool.
But in being poignant, you don't fall prey, I don't think, either one of you, to sentimentality, which can kind of be the sort of, at its worst, sort of navel-gazing emotion for the sake of emotion. So how do you see the kind of difference between trying to point to the very moving emotional nature of life while not falling prey to gross sentimentality?
That's a great question. When I think about, I kind of grew up with folk and country music and studied song structure and just kind of loved the way that I love the structure of country music. And when I think about the songs that I wrote very early on, they were very, very much like outside of my own lived experience and just learning how to create emotion, just for the sake of sentimentality. I mean, it really was kind of the worst of that. It's just like, oh, I can write this story and I can, have somebody die in it and make somebody cry. That'd be really easy to do.
Yeah. I mean, I discovered years ago a word. When I discovered the word, I thought, I've been looking for that word. And it was affectatious, But this sort of notion that you're doing stuff, writing stuff, presenting stuff in such a way to kind of manipulate people to get to a certain emotion, right?
Yeah.
So how do you try to navigate away from that then?
Well, there's I don't really know the best way to describe it other than trying to write something that it kind of passes this litmus test of, can I sing this and it be true for myself and I don't cringe inside? So if I feel like I'm trying to tell somebody how to feel, or if it's not true to my own experience, then this little warning bell goes off and it's like, yeah, you could play that and people might like that song, but every night you play it, you're going to be hating yourself. So there's that part where it's like, I want to be true to that, but also want, like good writers, I think they aren't telling people how to feel. They're kind of like describing experience and letting people fill in the blanks of how they feel about that experience. And so, I mean, the only way I know how to keep it from being that sentimentality thing is just to keep it true to my experience.
Affectation, though, shouldn't be confused with pandering, because we all pander. I mean, we're up in front of the audience, man. I want to know who these people, what's the community like? I mean, you want to know that going in. And I go to that line of pandering and I try to step back away from it so it's not so obvious.
Yeah.
But, we all do it. You want to be liked. I mean, that's why we're in entertainment anyway. Yeah. It's like, as little kids, we wanted other people to laugh at our jokes.
And I guess I think of it in terms of, and I think this goes back to kind of my academic experience. And then once I began doing a variety show, over a decade ago, I started realizing what you were saying, Andy. If you want people to hear what you have to say, it's not effective if you just give them blah, 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 right? It's a lot more effective if it's fewer words and oftentimes funny. And along that way towards that, I started realizing there's nothing wrong with taking human psychology seriously, right? Human psychology and being aware of human psychology and how people work can actually be a deep exercise of love and compassion for another person. It can become manipulative pretty easy, and sometimes the line, I think, between legitimate care, where's like the line you're talking about with the word you're using, pandering, there's a line you don't want to go across. But if you don't pay attention to the way people work, then you really can't help yourself or help them very much, seems like.
You probably experienced this when you first started working and pitching songs and playing around and everything. It's like, I did the Bluebird Cafe one night. I think it was that Sunday night thing where you put your name in the list. And I think we were slotted for like number 12 or 14 or whatever. And it was song after song after song of like, oh, this is in 1990, 91 or whatever. And it was like Garth Brooks-ish, or that era of like heartbreak. And everybody was just up there just where, the fourth, fifth song in, I'm like, I just want to go take some pills and like go sleep for a week. And this is horrible. And so I realized I had an art professor. Art was like my first love, painting and all that. So a lot of my songs are visual because that's how I approach everything. And I had a painter instructor tell me, he says, when everyone is screaming, you whisper. And when everyone is whispering, you scream. And I just saw when I got up there and was starting to sing these songs, people were perking up.
Yeah.
It was like they wanted to laugh. They wanted to have fun. They weren't there to hear morose, killing Molly down by the river songs.
Right.
They're like wanting something that they can relate to and laugh at.
Yeah.
Maybe even not laugh at, but
Yeah. A bit of levity. Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah. Andy, on your keeping it real, I think this next song is kind of a bit about that, right?
Yeah, this next song is one that I didn't really go in with a game plan. It really started kind of in the bedtime routine with my kids. I was just trying to make my daughter laugh, so I just picked up the guitar and started singing some stupid stuff. The stupid stuff is the first verse, and it had no meaning. I was just like putting words together, trying to make her laugh. But one of the things I love about songwriting and the humor part is like, after these years, you can kind of trust it. It was like, okay, well, so I wrote this ridiculous, I don't know where it's coming from. I have no plan for it. But like, what if I could trust it? Like, what if I could trust to see where it would take me? Huh. And so I took a couple of themes that just came up from the random first verse and just followed them. And I find that, that's one of the things I love about songwriting is like many times it's the one connection to my heart. So like I can trust it, follow it, and then it kind of tells me what I need to know.
There's a man who looks like Donald Trump in front of me in the communion line. I know that I'm supposed to keep my mind on better things, but his hair looks like a helmet of gold glued on by a 3-year-old. Nothing makes it move, so I can't help wondering, is it real? Is it real? Catholic school, 2nd grade, the time for first communion came. Me and blind Sam led the way to form a line down front. Sam stuck his tongue out for the bread. I took mine in my hand instead. But we both hesitated when they said to drink the blood. Is it real? Is it real? One night, me and my teenage son were reading a book that was given to us. Helpful tips for growing up, well, that's what it was supposed to be. The author said in chapter 2 that believing in God isn't hard to do. My son said, Dad, that isn't true. I had to agree. I had to agree. Now I walk up front and kneel down every Sunday morning I'm in town. It might be out of habit now, it's really hard to tell. But I bring the doubts that haunt my mind, the questions in these songs I write. Somehow in the bread and wine, I think I feel you there. Is it real? Is it real? Is it real?
Only time I think I've ever heard a song that can move from Donald Trump's hair to the doctrine of transubstantiation in a mere one verse move. It's
so deep.
Yeah, so impressive.
Thank you.
Antsy, I think we got time for one more song about Nashville. You got another one?
Yeah, this one's called The Big Time. A good friend took me to dinner at a high-class restaurant. We got to talking and he asked a question, what it was I really want. Well, I guess I didn't understand the question. What does everybody want? I said, a little happiness and peace of mind. And I said something about daily bread. He said, no, man, you've been going for years now, playing music and traveling around. Face it, Ants, you ain't getting any younger, and I've seen how the business can get you down. What's it gonna take to hit the big time? What's gotta happen to take that bow? I took another bite of my chicken fried steak. I said, what makes you think I'm not there now? Told him about all the people I meet, folks like you who make it all worthwhile. I named my friends and the girl I married. look out here and it makes me smile. And then the weekend comes and I grab my guitar and this crazy big time thing begins. Every night I'm throwing a party with a room full of my closest friends. Just how much more could my life hold? If I was a miner, I'd done struck gold. Couldn't be having a bigger time than this. If this ain't the big time, what is? If this ain't the big time, what is? Well, if you think the big time is playing arenas, being on television every night, riding in a limo and living in a mansion, and having my song sell more Bud Light, well, man, that stuff would just drive me crazy. Ducking paparazzi at the Holiday Inn, money and fame and a washboard stomach. It's the devil in the deep blue sea, my friends. I'll stay here under the radar with shooting stars going over my head. As long as you'll have me, I'll be right here singing my songs for my daily bread. Just how much more could my life hold? If I was a miner, I'd done struck gold. Yes, I did. Couldn't be having a bigger time than this. If this ain't the big time, what is? Hanging in a studio with all these cool musicians, and here at Tokens, you know what? If this ain't the big time, what is? If this ain't the big time, what is?
You've been listening to Tokens, Public Theology, Human Flourishing, The Good Life, and our episode on humor with Andy Gullahorn and Antsy McClain. They've been accompanied by Gabe Scott on dobro and Tim Lauer on keys, taped live at Nashville's Sound Emporium. Remember to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and even more so, we'd be delighted if you'd come see us here in Nashville at one of our live events or join us virtually. You can learn more about both of those options by visiting tokenshow.com. Our thanks to all the stellar team that makes this podcast possible. Executive producer and manager Christy Bragg of Bragg Management. Executive producer Jacob Lewis of Great Feeling Studios. Associate producers Ashley Bain and Tom Anderson. Music director Tim Lauer. Post-production mixing of the songs you heard today done by Ross Collier. Podcast engineering by Carrie Ann Harmon. And special thanks to our live engineer at the Sound Emporium that day, Joe Trentacosti. Thanks for listening, and peace be unto thee. The Tokens Podcast is a production of Tokens Media, LLC, and
Great Feeling Studios.